The topics and opinions expressed in the following show are solely those of the hosts and their guests and not those of W4CY Radio, its employees, or affiliates. We make no recommendations or endorsements for radio show programs, services, or products mentioned on air or on our web. No liability, explicit or implied, shall be extended to W4CY Radio or its employees or affiliates. Any questions or comments should be directed to those show hosts. Thank you for choosing W4CY Radio.
Welcome to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV, where we bring you educational information from top local experts in the fields of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. Now sit back and listen to experts in family law, association law, hearing loss, business brokers, home care, along with many other topics. Now here are your hosts, Steve-O and Sophia.
Good morning, Dallas-Fort Worth. Welcome to another Ask the Expert show where we bring you the top experts in the field of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. We have got the most incredible show for you. We have an expert. They've been with us for a while. They do Medicare. But today we have got a great topic. We're going to be talking about long-term care. And there's no better person to educate you on long-term care than Sharon Luker, LTC Planning Consultants. Good morning, Sharon.
Hey.
Good morning.
Good morning.
We get
Happy
to talk
Juneteenth. Today's Juneteenth.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Federal holiday, everyone. Federal holiday.
Well, you know what? We're going to take maybe a sore subject and make it more exciting today. We're talking about long-term care. I think this is going to be one of the most important shows that we do this year. But before we do that, Sharon, tell everybody about yourself, your background, and your company.
Okay. So everyone's used to hearing me with Lynn Tim with Your Medicare Gals. That is a separate part of my business, our business really, and we help people with on the Medicare side. But I also have an expertise in long-term care insurance, and that part of my business is called LTC Planning Consultants. And I've been helping people with long-term care issues for 20, 25 years. But things have really changed in that world and how to help pay for it. And that's why we're having this talk.
Yeah, that's there's so many people who are so uneducated and waiting till the last minute. And I think today's show is going to straighten those thoughts out.
So that is so true. No one wants to talk about long-term care. Well, let's define a little bit about what is long-term care. People think that long-term care is really medical. It is not medical. It is what the term that we all use is custodial, where, for instance, if you get Alzheimer's, you don't necessarily need medical care, but you need someone to take care of you. You need someone to help you put on your clothes. If you've had a stroke, you may need someone to help bathe you. So it is that type of care, which is the biggest draw of your retirement. It is shocking when it happens to people. And the calls I get all the time. I just got one the other day from a neighbor who said, Sharon, my mom is just not well. I think she's going down. She needs care. We can't afford it. And here in Dallas, Texas, it's pretty cheap, but she was having home care and other people come in. She told me it was costing her $13,000 a month. And I mean, $13,000 a month, that's really high. I will say that. You can go into a facility for a lot lower than that. But when you get hit with that, it is a shocker. So it's best to talk about it and plan which way you're going to go if that happens to a loved one. If it's not for you, we're dealing with it with parents. Parents are living longer, people are living longer, but they're all needing long-term care.
Sharon, I have got to bring something up that people have been reading about the last couple days.
Yeah, tell
Um,
me, tell me.
Dallas Cowboy superstar Michael Irvin
Yeah.
just found out his wife of, I think, 30 years is got Alzheimer's.
Wow.
She is 57 years old.
Wow.
Talk about unexpected.
You know,
And
Steve,
I
we
don't,
are hearing, more and more early, we call that early onset Alzheimer's. I am hearing about that more and more and more.
but you wonder, Sharon, did Michael plan for this? Or was he just going to wait? I mean, who would think something at that age?
Well, you're right. And I think Steve, oh, I forgot her name, but there was a famous basketball
Sandy.
coach, Sandy. Yeah. She announced this was several years ago. I mean, she was in her game, she was coaching, and she announced, I've been diagnosed with Alzheimer's. Well, people like Michael Irvin, they can afford to pay for it out of pocket, and they're going to pay. Um, but most people can't pay that. So, what are all alternatives? What do we look at? And there are a couple ways we can do this. So, when you look at covering your long-term care expense and short-term, and and long-term care is usually expected to last 90 days or more. 90 days or more. And that's when you're unable to perform several activities. We call it daily activity days of living, like bathing, like dressing, like using the bathroom, like walking, like getting up from one chair to another. We call that transferring. When you're unable to do that, you may need someone to come in. And when I say long term care, people usually think nursing home. Well, a lot of times, most of 70%, 80% of the cost these days is home health care, home health care. So when you're doing your analysis, there you have to look at two things. When people come to me, I use what's called a modern day approach to long-term care. There's what I will be asking, what I'll be looking at is health questions, medical history. You cannot just raise your hand and go, I want to buy insurance to pay the 6,000, 7,000 a month. You can't do that right when you're needing care. So I ask health questions because that kind of guides me which way I'm going to look at a solution for you. And then, so you kind of have to take off your clothes with me. Not literally, but you've got to be very honest with me. No judgments, And also the same thing is wealth. I need to know your assets. I need to know where money's coming from because certain of the solutions require more money than others. And so we kind of decide that. And if someone, Steve and I were just talking about this, if someone doesn't have very many assets, for instance, we can recommend going on Medicaid, but that's a long process. In Texas, it's income based. So if you have income coming in of more than, $2,800 a month from anything, then you will not qualify. And they also look at assets. A single individual can only have $2,000 of assets. It's like money, like CDs and money in a bank and that type of thing. So Medicaid's really designed for the more indigent people in our society. And so I ask those things, and then I kind of, some policies you may not qualify for if you have certain medical conditions. And but there are solutions out there. Do not assume it's so expensive. You may not have full coverage, but maybe you can get coverage for the first year. Maybe you can get something, for $50 a month or $100 a month. They have these new short-term plans up there that cover up to a year, possibly up to 2 years. So those are viable options these days too.
Does Medicare cover anything?
Well,
long
so that's
term?
a good point. That is a misconception. Medicare is designed for your health insurance. Health insurance, okay? That's going to the doctor, going to the hospital, getting cancer treatments. Now, Medicare does pay, there is some crossover. Medicare does pay sometimes. So but you have to have a prior hospital stay. So you need to be in the hospital 3 nights, basically. So if you've got, let's say, Alzheimer's and you don't have a hospital stay, then Medicare is not going to pay. What Medicare really pays for is what we call rehab. You've been in a hospital. Now you need rehab for, 10 days, 20 days. That's considered short-term care. And if you meet the qualifications, you have to be getting better. And if you meet the qualifications, it'll pay the first 20 days of care. But then after that, you have a copay. And today the copay is $204 a day. So it's more short term, but it does. And theoretically, Medicare doesn't pay for home health care, but they have broadened that. And I hear that it is paying for some home health care. But again, it's more on a short-term basis, not a long-term basis.
So, what type is the insurance people need that they are probably not being covered by? How does that work?
Well, so there's multiple ways to go on this, okay? So you can buy what we call a standalone, just a separate policy that you basically buy a pool of money, and you have limitations, whatever you buy and how much you can spend per day or per month. And it's like buying house insurance. If you never use it, you never get any money back. It's insurance. So we call that a standalone policy. And those can be designed any way those policies can get very expensive if you want to cover the full care. Care, by the way, in DFW is 6,000, 7,000 a month. I will say this. The other day, I was talking to someone. I deal with people all throughout Texas, and they were telling me they were maybe around Round Rock, north of Austin, and they told me they were paying $10,000 a month for their mother's care. Wow.
Wow.
Wow. I had not heard that high, but that's what the woman said to me. This was about a week ago. But because those policies can be pretty pricey, these days, we never buy it to cover the full amount. You may have Social Security, you may have a pension, you may have other income that you can use to pay for part of the care. We just we buy these policies to mitigate the pain. Now, that's one way to go. Now, other people will go, well, I have money. I'm going to pay for it out of my own pocket. Like Michael Irvin, I have money. I'm going to pay for it.
Right.
And it's never going to happen to me. It's never going to happen to me. The older you get, the higher your probabilities. You'll hear me tell my story that my grandmother lived to 103. She was 98 when she moved out of her house, 98, and she needed care for 5 years. 5 years. So don't just think that you're going to die, because you might not. So those people that say, I'm going to self-insure, I've got some solutions for that. If you're going to self-insure, then you should have some money to pay for that, money set aside. So you can transfer some of that money over to, say an annuity or life insurance that might give you can transfer over, say, an annuity. Let's say you've got $100,000 and you say, I'm going to use that for my care. Well, if you put it into a certain type of annuity, and there's multiple ones out there, they will, if you need care, they may give you 3 times the amount. So for that $100,000, you can get $300,000 of benefit. And that's where I'm looking at the wealth to see if you have that kind of cash to transfer over. You basically, to help pay for this, you're transferring your need over to an insurance company to help pay for it. Now, one other thing that's relatively new are these short-term policies, and they can go up to a year. You're basically buying an amount per day. $100 per day or $200 a day, then go up to $400 a day. And so every day you use it, it kind of subtracts depending on the amount of days that you buy. But those are for people that can't qualify medically. That's the other thing. Remember, I said you've got to qualify medically. So you may have all the money in the world and you may say, I want that standalone. Michael Irvin may come to me right now and go, oh, Sharon, my wife just got Alzheimer's. I want to buy one of those policies. Too late, Michael. Too late. She's been diagnosed. It's too late. So the short-term plans also work in instances, and they can be cheap. They can be like $50 a month, $100 a month, $200 a month, something like that. Yeah, that's why we're looking at them. They are not to qualify medically. What we call underwriting is more liberal because the company's not on the hook for as much money as a standalone policy. That's kind of the deal. And they can cover what we call short-term care. Let me give you an example. You go in and you have a hip replacement. And hip replacements are known to take about 60 days to recuperate. Well, you're in a bed.
I've had one.
Yeah. So tell me, Steve, so you're in a bed. You can't get up and walk. You need someone to help take care of you. And so these short-term policies will kick in and pay for that. They can start from day one of home health care. Your standalone long-term care policies or the annuities we were talking about or the life insurance combo products we were talking about don't pay for short-term because those policies require the doctor to say, this is going to be a long-term care, more than 90 days. But the short-term plans are good alternatives right now. And sometimes I'm marrying, depending on the expense, I might take a short-term plan and marry it with a standalone plan. But for those people that are self-insuring, I would do it smartly. So they can be affordable. Don't think they can't. But realize you're not going to get coverage to pay for eight years of care. What you're really covering, Steve, is Alzheimer's. Like Michael is going to be in a world of hurt because his wife got early onset Alzheimer's. She could live. My uncle had Alzheimer's for 17 years. 17 years. Oh. That's a nut. And my aunt took care of him as long as she could. Now, again, Michael can afford it, but there's also the emotional side of it. I'm just talking about the financial side of it. The emotional side is a whole different thing.
Yeah, but Sharon, how many people are out there that aren't the Michael Irvins that,
right?
I mean, if you get Alzheimer's, you can't go in there and buy a policy then.
Right. And average amount of time, like on a claim, when someone goes on a policy and a claim is 8 years for Alzheimer's, 8 years. And when you have the cognitive issues and you need to go into a facility, you're paying a lot more than the normal price to have the cognitive side, because especially on things like Alzheimer's, because they tend to wonder, they have to watch them more carefully. I know people don't want to talk about it, but once you've gone through it, you know the pain.
Yes.
My neighbor told me when she said it was an eye opener seeing what her mother's going through right now. And she said, my husband and I want to talk about this. We want to have that conversation. So it's
people procrastinate, don't they?
Well, they do. They don't want to spend the money. Who wants to spend the money? Like you were just saying, Steve, things are so expensive right now. Yes. Food. And I mean, it's shocking. You go out to a restaurant, you go here. People don't want to pay for it. And I understand that. So if you don't have assets, if you have assets, you don't have to pay anything. You just transfer that one asset into another asset that will leverage it. They may give you 2 to 3 times the amount and still pay you 5% on your money. I mean, who wouldn't want to do that? It's kind of a no-brainer. But if you don't have those assets,
what about Medicare supplement? Do they cover any of this, or is that
No.
short term too?
So Medicare supplements cover what Medicare doesn't cover. Okay. So if it's an approved Medicare expense, then they will cover the differences. I mean, like that copay, that 204 copay, up to a certain amount of time, up to like 60 days, so they will help fill in the gaps, but again, short term. Most of the time I'm talking long term, we're talking greater than 90 days. And they won't know. If Medicare doesn't approve it, they don't pay. End of story.
Well, we only have a few minutes left, believe it or not. This show's gone by so fast. How much does long-term care cost?
Well, again, it goes all over the place. I told you can get one of these short-term plans for as little as $50, $100 a month. You can get standalone for $300, $400. It's kind of like buying a car. It depends how much coverage you want. It's
Right.
worth it to shop it. And then it also depends what you can qualify for. Now, before we have to stop, I want to let you know, Steve, that this is such a huge topic right now that I am giving a seminar on this topic in Plano. I've got two coming up on the 25th of July and the 30th of July at the Plano Environmental Center. And these things sell out. So email me or call me. I'll put you on the list. I'm going to bring in some light Maggianos, to have a light dinner while we talk about it. But if you want more information or want to meet me in person, I'm going to be doing that at the end of July.
What is your email address, Sharon?
So my email address for my long-term care side is LTC Planning Consultants with an S.com, www.ltcplanningconsultants.com. And then my phone number is 972-596-1318. It's worth having the conversation and knowing what's out there. Don't just assume that you know what's going on, because so many things have changed.
Sharon, thank you so much. You are just a world of information, and you'll be back again with us next month.
Yeah.
And thank you. And you know what? We should probably talk more long-term, because I've got so many more questions for you.
Okay. Whatever you want.
Thank you.
Okay.
Sharon
bye.
Luker. Thank you so much, Sharon. That's Sharon Luker. They normally do the Medicare gals, but we wanted to talk about long-term care today. Thanks for tuning in. We'll be back again with you next week with more Ask the Experts.
Thanks for tuning in today to the Ask the Expert show on W4CY Radio and Talk4 TV. Tune in next week and every week to hear more from our experts on personal injury, insurance, air condition repairs, estate planning, Medicare, and many other topics in the areas of legal, health, financial, and home improvement. See you next week.